right, the fire is blazing hot, it's scorching hot. Is this fire fake or real? This is what is in the People Daily today as the editor cartoon, what we're discussing right now. And also we shall be looking at this. Biden elevates Ruto in Africa Charm offensive. And this is going to be historic. President could address Congress, becoming the second in Africa. Biden administration courts Kenya as diplomatic competition with China intensifies. We will be analyzing, slicing and dicing this as well with our panelists. But we continue pace with the biggest story of the day and the week as well. And this also will be within, of course, next week. We'll know the ultimate decision on May 13th. Now that we have the Agriculture Committee given that particular mandate to, of course, interrogate this issue of Linturi and the fake fertilizer scandal. I think before we took a short break, we all knew. Dr. Martin Olo?
Yeah. Basically, what we want to agree is that we do have a national problem, and as I was telling Mheshimiwa off air, is that somebody has to be the victim here. And we have one bearded fellow who is a relative of professor here that we want to deal with, because for the time being is the CS in charge of agriculture. And even if it does not amount to the fact that he was behind it, we want to deal with perception. So if we can deal with him and actually give him his due process, I mean, as we've said, he could go to the committee, defend himself. The Agriculture Committee can come up with a report which absolves him. The committee can come to the full house and say, look, there are no issues here, or there are deeper issues here which are beyond Linturi. And on that one, we shall have, the committee will have vindicated you, Mheshimiwa. So we have not said that we've seen the end of this. There are good discussions, there are good disagreements or points, divergent views, and that's fine. That's what democracy is all about. Including that shouting, as Barack was saying earlier in Parliament, it's part of freedom of expression. So even Linturi will have his day, and he will also express himself. What we are simply articulating here is that if corruption is ever going to be an issue in this country, it should start from the top, because they say the fish rots from the head. So if we are not going to deal with the corruption as a concern of the entire government, it cannot be outsourced to a committee of parliament, it cannot be outsourced to a commission. It must be an entire government machinery that helps us to address this issue of corruption.
All right, but we need to also maybe to flip as we're winding up on it. What are the political implications of this? The political dynamics? And I'm looking at you, Professor Gitile and Naituli. I don't know if you have ambitions as well, because
the impeachment process.
No. Yeah, of course.
We'll replace Ameru with Ameru, so we'll put you there.
You think from the things I say here, the things I say here, not disqualified.
Because they want a replacement from the same region as well. And they'll feel that, one of their own has been sacrificed at the end of the day. At the end of the day, even if he's not responsible for this, still he's a man and the face of that particular office. What are the dynamics?
I'm not sure if that is really even necessary, because we can think like that, because this is how we have shifted. Because what the Kenya needs is a service from anyone it employs. And because it needs service, it's irrelevant where that person is supposed to come from, as long as he gives the service that we require.
But I know you're playing puts in that particular question. You know the reality of the question.
But the political implication, in my opinion, is zero anywhere, because what we need is less corruption in this country.
No
so we
corruption.
need, less or no corruption at all. That's what we need. So any process that is not thorough, inclusive, because I feel that when the president came in, one of the things he needed to do was to allow the people who the other government accused of corruption to work through the court process, so that the court clears them. That didn't happen, okay? So now, if you go through this process, it does not give us a guarantee that we are going to have a corruption-free environment in the future. It gives us no such guarantee. Like my colleague said here, is that we want to see the legal process, the institutions that we have set up to protect us working together in order to protect us. So I don't see any implications here. This is just a one thing. What is it called? It's one-time event. This is an event. An event does not produce a movement. An event does not produce, it would make it feel safer.
It does.
It makes us feel safer.
Yes, an event does. It takes Rosa Park, for example.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah?
Now you have to refuse to stand.
To refuse to stand.
Yes.
and the whole movement
Starts from there.
Starts from there.
Yes.
Or a young man, a vendor, a hustler somewhere.
Set himself on fire.
Set himself
Somewhere
on
in
fire.
Tunisia.
Azizi.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't forget that there was this soldier that went and set himself on fire and nothing happened.
The other day, in this
place. He misread the mood. Yeah, he misread the mood. The mood must first of all
be conducive,
building
right?
up to a certain momentum. And take notice, those who exercise power in the country, that the mood in this country is actually building
It's
up.
building, yes.
It's building up.
It is actually.
And someday it's going just to take a moment, an individual, to do something. And the powder keg will go poop.
Yeah.
And to be in context, say that such mood emanates from Western, like now the Tawe movement.
Like the Tawe movement is not something to be taken lightly. It is going to snowball if the issues that are being addressed are not taken care of. You know, you cannot stop it. One of the interventions you can think of is saying that let us nip this movement in the bud. In fact, that might be just what the movement is waiting for, to now burst out of proportion. Yeah? So we are catching fish, and we want to catch big fish. But when you go out as a fisherman and you have gone to catch fish, if you do not get fish of the size that you wanted, yeah, it is not the Moby Dick that you wanted, it's a smaller fish. You don't return it into the water and say, Mheshimiwa Kirwa, that huyu samaki ni mdogo. Sio ni mdogo ajabu. Sio ule nilikuwa nikitaka. That you return that fish in the water and sink the hook again. No, you take that fish and deal with it. And it doesn't matter. The fish are supposed to swallow the bait through the mouth. But it doesn't matter. If you get the fin and the fish gets out of the water, we shall still deal with that fish. And so, as they said during the Passion of Jesus Christ, it's expedient that one individual should die for the rest, if that individual is willing to die for the rest. If he is not, let him name the names.
That is Caiaphas. Right. What is truth? Anyway, we want to also see what is happening in this particular publication. That is the Star. Biden elevates Ruto in Africa Charm offensive. We'll be remiss if we don't really talk about it. This is historic. And it says here, President could address Congress, becoming the second in Africa. Biden administration courts Kenya as diplomatic competition with China intensify. If my director may just pick up this so that we can go hand in hand. There is a very interesting, of course, this is the invite letter, as we can see it here. We have it from Honorable Mike Johnson. And it says, Mr. Speaker, we are writing to respectfully request that you extend, if I may just pick it up, if you may, extend a formal invitation to the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Samoei Ruto, that is Samoei Ruto, to address a joint session of Congress on his official visit to the United States. Let me try and expand it. If invited, President Ruto will be the first Kenyan head of state to address a joint session of Congress and the first African head of state to address Congress since former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf 18 years ago. Such an invitation will underscore the importance of US-Kenya relationship and send a valuable signal to the people of Africa. This year, we are celebrating the historic 60-year anniversary of the US-Kenya diplomatic relationship. Kenya has the largest, most diversified economy and a young and a growing population. It It also has a young, ambitious and well-educated workforce eager to contribute to the development of the country. These factors have helped the country become a leader in mobile money and information and communication technology. US-Kenya relations continues to deepen, encompassing strong political, economic, technological and cultural ties. The United States among Kenya's largest trading partners, and Kenya is one of Africa's most dynamic economies, boasting a top utilization rate of US market access and the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. Nearly 100,000 Kenyans or Kenyan Americans call the United States home. Moreover, the United States maintain an overseas military base at Manda Bay on the Indian Ocean to support operations to counter terrorist threats from Al-Shabaab. These are just some examples of the close ties forged between our nation and Kenya over the past 6 decades. And it continues, and let me just finish it now that I've read a good chunk of it. Kenya's security environment is growing increasingly complex with persistent terrorist threats from Al-Shabaab. The country has played an important stabilizing role in East Africa and beyond in recent years and stands poised to attract significant American investment that can help catalyze African economic growth. It is crucial for members of Congress to understand how Kenya's active participation in Africa's future and beyond is vital for peace and stability in the region and aligns with the broader economic and strategic interest of the United States. We therefore respectfully request that at your earliest convenience you invite President William Samoei Ruto to address a joint session of Congress when he is in the United States on or about May the 23rd, 2023. And you can see the appended signatures there. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chair, that is Michael McCall, and Gregory Mix, Ranking Member, House Foreign Affairs Committee. We can begin from there. So Kenya and United States lately, they've been getting along very famously. Should we be celebrating this? And do we have any sting at the end of the tail?
I think you should more afraid than is celebratory. First of all,
more afraid than celebratory.
Yeah. First of all,
I thought it was meta.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yes.
Today, I'm going to give you the floor.
No. It is me who's failing as a moderator. You know, because those
is a new topic. It's a new
you have the floor.
Okay.
I can start.
Yes. Let him start.
It's okay. I think I just wanted to lay the foundation.
Yeah.
And that foreign policy, the first consideration for any country is that what is in it for us. And therefore Americans are saying what is in it for us to deal with Kenya the way we are dealing with in the context of the African continent. As you know, Kenya has accepted to sacrifice their children in Haiti, and that is a big plus for them.
For the Americans.
For the Americans. And therefore they are doing that because they know this is somebody who has accepted to work with us to achieve our end, regardless of the damage that is going to be occasioned to the country. The second issue is for us to remind ourselves, because at times it takes others to remind us what we believe in. That for every $1 that gets into Africa, $7 leave the continent. So the net effect is for every transaction, we lose $6 every day or every minute that transaction is done. And therefore there must be some strong business interest in Kenya that these Americans are looking at and wishing to be able to use the occasion of our president visiting America to amplify that image that Kenya is a destination, and therefore the rest of the countries in Africa will be able to sort of believe their story. I'm saying so because our president has been able to articulate issues, whether it is fertilizer, whether it is housing. He does it so well that you believe the story that may not be there. And therefore he's done it so well, and if he's going to do it, then Africa will almost follow the cue from what the president will say in America. Number three, I get worried every time an American president praises you.
Very dangerous.
From the beginning of time, the moment you hear these foreign masters praising you, they know they have invested heavily in you to further their case and improve their capacity to bring neo-colonialism in Africa
Use the
again.
word they use. To me, are the word they use. They know they can use you.
They know they can use you, because you know the good professor wants to take me through the course that I'm yet to complete. So this is really, we should not look at it, we should not even smile about it. We should actually be serious. Yes,
If you can.
they know exactly why they are inviting our president, and they know why they are inviting to address the joint Congress and Senate houses. Let me leave it there.
Right. Let me allow Dr. Martin Olo, because I think he will be leaving shortly.
Yes.
He's got a meeting, so we need to just also give him ample time to comment on this. But if we look at the events, we've had also the Chamber of Commerce here, we've had other investors, when we got the news from the Nairobi Security Exchange regarding the BlackRock, and they've chosen Kenya amongst many other African countries as the destination of investment. Should we also be keenly looking what are the interests as is being raised? Because of course, you with your foreign policy, your national interest really comes first. No one wakes up and think, oh, I'm thinking about Martin Olo this morning, or Gerua. I always think about myself, right? We are very atavistic as human beings. You know, that is the natural survival mode, is just think about yourself at the end of the day. So, as a vast, is there any sting at the end of the tail?
You know, let's begin by saying that in any relationship, there has to be mutual benefits. The Americans and the Kenyans have a history over the years. Remember, right about from independence, the great airlift, Tom Mboya led. The Americans have had an interest around Kenya. The issue about the geopolitics and the access to the ocean that Kenya offers for U.S. defense forces and so on, and geopolitics. So Kenya has always been in that space. There is a heightened interest in Kenya, especially before the elections and now with the president, President Ruto. To the extent that you can see they have given him an official invitation, and on this occasion they are also giving him a chance to address the joint session of Congress, and that historical. But there's also some shift that's happening in the American environment. In fact, there's a legislation that's about to come through in the US Congress, which essentially is addressing the issue of localization. Now, localization agenda means that in the past, what America has done with aid is to tie it to American institutions and American sources. They want to overcome that and bring that directly into respective countries and use local institutions. And to some extent, that is happening, especially in Kenya, that is happening. There has been a warming up of the Bretton Woods institutions and Kenya. The World Bank, the IMF, the recent IDA 21 meeting in Kenya. There is a move that is actually profiling Kenya up, and President Ruto is very important in that. The Americans have a big vote in the Bretton Woods institutions. Indeed, a relationship that is warm with them gives you the advantage of the Bretton Woods institutions and so on. But again, you have mentioned it. Over the last couple of years, or let's say months, we've seen serious American investments coming through, BlackRock and others that are actually eyeing the stock market and so on. And with those investments, there are also a heightened security interest, and for that reason, from where these relationships are sitting, we should see more or support or more diplomatic ventures coming through. So this is just one of those things that I think the Star is very bold on, that it elevates. Because then America is saying, look, in this continent, there are no perfect people, but we need some friends. And if we can package Barack Muluka and make him our friend, why not? So if we can package Kenya and make it a case that works for the American relationship, that's what they are doing. And I can see that this May and that address to Congress is going to be used as a really opportunity to premise or to prep up Kenya, to prop up Kenya in such a way that it will receive unprecedented support from the American sources, but more importantly, increase its relationship in terms of foreign aid, in terms of trade. The AGOA agreement has just been renewed again for a number of years. So there are positives that are going on, and therefore you can say that this visit by the president is going to be very critical in building up this relationship. Now, every relationship is mutual, is reciprocal. So how much we get from it, it depends on our ability to bargain. Americans going to have an interest and vested interest? Yes, they will. They will also want to put their interests on the table.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's hear from...
First of all, this dandelion is demeaning to the president. You see, Americans invited Les Lesher, the former Solidarity leader of Poland, to address the joint session of Congress when he was a Solidarity leader, not even when he was a president. I can guarantee you, nobody wrote that American president elevates, but there is an African being invited, so the African has been elevated. So I think the journalist who wrote this one should not do this to our president. We need to respect ourselves. We need to be very proud of who we are. Number two, I've never, ever, all these years, if you read the African history, whenever an American thinks that you have an important leader here they can do business with, that's the time you need to get very worried. America never, ever supports a good African. They always support the dictators in Africa. Now, this is because their interest is purely American. They are not interested in you. In fact, Moi was very good at this. He used to tell us there's no Muzungu who likes you. Now, why I'm saying this is, my friend here talking about, military base here. The more closer you are to America, the more you are going to suffer. And the America won't care. We are fighting a terror war, which is not ours, which is an American war. We just inherited it ourselves. The terrorists, they come and bomb an American embassy. They were not bombing Kenyans because we don't have an issue with them. They were bombing Americans. A lot of Kenyans died. The Americans compensated their citizens and they refused to compensate the Kenyans. Up to today, they have not. So now that they're inviting our president, maybe now they should agree to compensate our people who died because they were close to them. The closer you go to America, the more problems you are inviting to yourself because you're inheriting also American enemies. Now this, I don't even know, they are calling it Africa offensive. I saw a map of Africa the other day. And I looked at the countries supporting Israel versus the countries supporting Iran, and there were like 6 in the whole African continent supporting Israel, which means supporting America because Israel rules America. So what I'm saying is, it's good to have a good relation with America, but kindly have it under the table. It should not be this elevated. It will work against us. Our relations with America and the West has been very long. But you can't get out of this building and point to a single viable project that they have ever completed for us. The relation with the Chinese has been very short. Never mind the corruption, because the corruption has been ours, basically, not Chinese. So you can say that at least they put it down in the SNGR, even though we stole money ourselves, the Chinese didn't steal that money, is ours. Because that project was supposed to be 150 billion from Mombasa to Malaba. A new government comes in, called the Jubilee government, opens that contract and raises the price with the same people. So the Chinese can't tell you stop stealing from your own people. They will say, okay, fine. We will take what we require. If you get here, you can go to Expressway. You can go to Thika Road. What can you point to Americans? This is why Museveni was telling them the other day that I'm tired of your capacity building in hotels. where you bring money, but you eat it in hotels. An elevated relationship with America can only hurt Kenya. Trust me. Because these fellows, first, we inherit the enemies. We have a terrorist problem, which is not ours, because we don't have to fight these Arabs or the Somalis or their fellows. We had absolutely no reason to go to Somalia. Zero reason. Because the Americans persuaded the weaker countries. Everybody refused. They persuaded the weaker countries like in Burundi, Uganda. Before we knew it, we also jumped into the thing. And they created a problem that we didn't have. So what I'm saying here is that as a country, practicing neutrality may actually help us more than tying ourselves so closely to people we cannot control. Right now, America is involved in supporting a genocide in Israel. That is going to create hate by the survivors of this genocide. And whether you like it or not, they are going to organize to hate back. To hate back the Americans and American interests. They wouldn't do that because, this is how Carthage was, this is how Rome fell. Every day, because the Carthage had given them a lot of trouble, they said the Carthage must be destroyed. They actually destroyed the Carthage.
Yes.
But there was a survivor called Hannibal. And that survivor eventually brought revenge to Rome. So what we are doing here is, this is not an honor. Our president is our president. Okay? With all the dignity and the integrity that the president of Kenya deserves. He doesn't have to be given elevation by an American president. Because they are equal in status. Okay? So the journalist who wrote this one, he needs to give our president an apology. Because
not just our president.
Africa's.
All of us.
All of us.
Because we are the ones who elevated him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah? At the pole, we elevated him and validated him through other instruments of validation. But I hear my colleagues and I agree with them by and large. The Americans tend to see very far. Very far. What they are seeing is something that we probably will only get to learn of in years to come. Mheshimiwa Kirwe here was spot on, Mheshimiwa, that diplomacy is about self-interest.
Yeah.
What is it that you have seen and what is it that you are going to give back? It's never about moralism, about some kind of ethical goodness. The United States of America has been associated with some of the worst regimes anywhere in the world. Whether it's Augusto Pinochet's Chile, Mobutu Sese Seko's Zaire, Ferdinand Marcos, the Philippines, with successive regimes in Israel.
Yes.
You can name a whole slate of nations. They will always turn and look the other side, provided that their selfish interest is being addressed. And Dr. Martin Olo suggests that we also pitch high when we meet them and we are negotiating. The trouble with Africa is that when our leaders have been, in the words of this editor at the Star, at Radio Africa,
Been elevated.
When they have been elevated and it is time to negotiate and to say what the benefits are going to be for the other side, they negotiate for themselves. That is why, Professor, I'm very worried about this negotiation under the table, because that is what African leaders actually do. They will get their own package somewhere on Isle of Man, in Malta, and wherever. Those accounts that are only recognized through certain numbers. Their cut is put there. So we have got to be fairly cautious about that. And to listen carefully to the propaganda that we're going to be hearing about this whole address, because certainly Big Bro does not give you that platform on the chip. There must be something very big that is in the offing, and we need to take carefully and keenly President Yoweri Museveni's words early this week when he talked about neo-colonialism. He talked about his no-nonsense approach to Western institutions today. And we do hope that the localization can actually be now bereft of some of the excesses of neo-colonialism as we have known it. Unfortunately, we remain a new colony state where our leader is supposed to feel very proud that he has been invited to address joint houses of Congress. And we need to ask ourselves, what is it we don't get right? That when the American president comes here, he should feel privileged that he's addressing the joint houses of Senate and National Assembly.
Very interesting also article that was in the African Business. Last month publication, no, this was last year. And it says Africa is breaking apart, literally, from the Gulf of Aden in the north all the way to Mozambique in the south. The African continental plate is splitting along the East African Rift Valley. The two halves of the continent are moving apart by around 0.5 centimeter a year. At this rate, within 5 to 10 million years, East Africa will have drifted off to become its own continent. The good news is that, of course, all of us want to be here. The good news is that the forces...
to be around.
I think Barack might be.
To be around
in the spirit of animals. Let me finish. It says the good news is that the forces deep beneath the Earth's surface that are responsible for this tectonic divorce provide Africa with a potentially vast supply of renewable energy. At numerous points throughout the Rift Valley region, flows of molten magma in the rift creates underground reservoirs of superheated steam and water, where geological conditions allow these geothermal resources can be piped to the surface and used to generate electricity or harnessed directly for heating or to drive cooling system. Of all the countries in the region, Kenya has made by far the most progressive in exploiting its geothermal potential. Indeed, Kenya first started to explore its geothermal potential as far back as 1950s, but the sector only really took off from the late 1990s onwards as the country looked for a way to combat electricity supply problem. I need not to read the rest of the details.
Yes.
Barack was saying Americans can see far.
Yeah. Yes. So now
we'll leave it at that.
Yes, Dr. Law, he said something about America having a big voice in the Bretton Woods institutions. I want to remind him.
But even if we go before to the Bretton Woods, can we relate even what I've said with BlackRock?
I'll do that.
Because BlackRock is largely on the renewable energy.
Let me just make this point. And the point is that shouldn't worry Dr. here. Because one of the achievements of the Nusu Mukate government, of Kibaki administration, was to remove us from those institutions because there is nothing they like as a client state. We are now becoming a client state. Again. And that is not something to be proud of because we have already left. Kibaki already removed us from being a client state on Bretton Woods institutions. So you shouldn't get worried that we are now clients, meaning client of Americans.
It's called right of reply. The issues that we are dealing with have to do with some geopolitical realities, and that the Bretton Woods institutions are a reality and they're here. and that their investments are also dependent on certain reciprocal relationship. And to the extent that these institutions are in the US and fairly, America has a strong voice in them, that is a fact that we must deal with. And you said it. And maybe let me put it in response. There is a reason why American businesses have not been doing business here. Remember, the Mombasa Road was a contest between American companies and others. Every other opportunity they have had to bid, they have either lost or have had to withdraw because of our vested interests and conflict of interest. So every time the Americans are asked to bribe, they don't bribe.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore, we have been doing business. Now you talk about us going away from them. The problem with us going away from them is a human rights issue and also a corruption issue. You have mentioned it about the SGR. How did we move it from what we had initially negotiated to what eventually it became? The other day I saw this government taking over, and one of the things they did is to increase the toll on expressway as if it was a government project, because we had agreed everything and repayment is for 25 years. Why would it be that you want to increase the toll on this road when it's not in your hands? This is a PPP, so whoever is getting whatever they are getting, they must get and get out with it in 25 years.
And
but you come
and a BOT,
and a
bill operates
and transfer. And you come and the first thing you are doing is to increase. What are you trying to do? The other day, there's a small, fracas on it around Mulolongo. You decide how much it's going to cost to repair. Without any estimate, you say it's going to cost 700 million. And that 700 million seems to be a figure that is bandied around at every other occasion. Now, those are issues to deal with. So, yes, there's something about Americans losing business because of the environment and it wanting to have more opportunities if the circumstances change.
Right, Baraka, but in terms of trade imbalance as it is, Kiproto, you want to weigh in on this? Even if we have the AGOA being renewed, we've seen the uptake of AGOA has not been very sterling as well. We don't even have the capacity
to
exploit it at the end of the day. What exceedingly beneficial value is it for this country? If you may just look at it.
Well, I think it's just it has nominal value that we are dealing with each other, but the truth of the matter is that the mistake is not theirs, the mistake is ours. What we should be doing is to ask ourselves, how do we improve our capacity such that by the time these things are done, we have the requisite capacity to face the realities of that particular time. But we seem to be very quick in signing documents without asking ourselves what is the input we need to have between now and the time some of these processes kick off. Now, when it comes to what we are calling Black Rock, I do not know the company very well, but as you've said, you put it very well, that we've had this renewable energy for many years, from the 50s, and now we seem to have greater capacity than many countries in Africa. And therefore, these guys are coming to take advantage of that. And what we may consider to be private sector, public sector participation may involve some of the players who are in power today. Because what we've known about these fellows is that they go overseas, structure some companies, come back and pretend to be investing with the government of the day, only to leverage the resources of the government for their own advantage. Remember, there was this company that was registered 23 days before it was allowed to import some commodities into Kenya, only to realize that it was just the Kenyans in power who are doing that to the extent of benefiting themselves. And as Barack was talking earlier, I was keen to understand the description of State House, because I've been there many times in the past, and usually when you are told you are needed in State House, it is the president. And when President Moi was the president, we knew you will not come back empty-handed. During Kibaki's time, if you went to State House, you you are going to discuss issues. At times even you don't get tea unless it's the day of the cabinet. I remember one morning we discussed, and when we were happy that we were creating some rhythm, former Minister Dr. Mukisa Kitui told Kibaki, now tea can be brought. Then he said, no, that one we'll take it there. And we thought there was some tea already prepared for us. When we got out, there was no tea. So in State House, yes, we know the president is there. And whoever is there is on the invitation of the president or at the pleasure of the president. And therefore, if this fellow was told to pen something down to admit liability, it means either the president was aware or somebody was doing it on behalf of the president. And if the president was not aware, you've now made him aware that there is some transaction that took place in the State House. And to use the words of the late president of Tanzania, Mwalimu Nyerere, we cannot allow our State House to be a den of corruption. And therefore, we are actually requesting our president that if there is any corruption, it should be done away from State House. That's the only way we can leave that place sacrosanct and sacred.
Indeed.
Because he himself almost commissioned a team to pray and to cast the demons of alcohol from State House when he took over. So we don't need another prayer to cast the demons of corruption when he leaves office sooner or later.
All right.
So this is something that I'm getting increasingly worried.
Thank you. We need to be winding up. Even talking of prayer, I can see that the First Lady budget has increased by 17% to 696 million shillings. That is, says budget allocation for the First Lady Rachel Ruto's office will be increased by 17.3% to 696.6 million shillings in the new financial year starting July. A report tabled in Parliament by the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Juguna Ndungu, shows this. She, just to read at the tail end of it, that you're connected with prayers. She is also the founder of the patron of Mama Doing Good and champion of faith, diplomacy, and mental health and wellness as well. So,
yeah, our money is committed. That's why we can't pay doctors. We have committed money to priorities.
Let's get our headline thoughts from you, Baraka, as well.
Yeah, you know, that is not quite right. And I agree, Ikulu ni mahali patakatifu.
Yeah.
Yeah, even without you inviting Ben Hill.
Did you say Ikulu or Ikulu?
Ikulu.
Whatever.
You
You
know,
understand what it is.
you know
It's a Luya.
Yeah, so I'm wondering whether he's talking about heaven.
you know that word was
We need to
borrowed.
wind up, guys.
The word Ikulu was borrowed from my mother tongue.
Yeah, I think so.
And it means up there.
Yeah.
Ikulu. So Ikulu ni mahali patakatifu ambapo hapastahili kupelekwa mambo ya aina fulani fulani. Yeah, and its sanctity must be at all times upheld. And that's why the chief resident at State House should get concerned about these things which are being said, about some documents having been signed there under duress, about association of underhand activities with that institution. Otherwise, as the head of state goes to, and the government goes to the United States, and hopefully he will have that opportunity to address Congress, he should borrow a leaf from President Yoweri Museveni. In any event, we are being told that this is supposed to be the curtain raiser for Africa. And what is the thinking about the rest of the continent? What are these positions, very strange ones, that we are taking in the international forum? One is thinking a lot more specifically about Israel, about Iran, about Gaza. And sometimes we rush to speak out of turn. We don't even seem to process
Indeed.
the things before making pronouncements. And I do hope that those are not the sorts of things that His Excellency the President is going to be endorsing in the United States.
Yeah, so the optics as well, what will it really attract, as you're trying to put it? You know how also from other quarters, how the terrorists, they perceive America as the Great Saturn, right? So you working with the Great Saturn, what are the implications at the end of the day that also might come and affect your country? Your closing remarks, sir?
Exactly. Why we also need to take this thing with a pinch of salt is simply because there is a rising consciousness now among the young Africans that the neocolonialism has been banned for us, especially when you use the belt, the West African belt. You can see that all the takeovers by the military is intended to exhaust what it is called?
Exercise.
Yes,
Exercise.
the ghost of neocolonialism. Okay, so when this is moving, you can imagine that the consciousness is also rising here. So it's not really something that we need to think is a game changer on the African continent.
Thank you. Right.
I know that we talked roughly about BlackRock, but when you look at the history of BlackRock, it has only been around since 1988, so some 36 years. It's not the biggest of the companies in the US. It's about, they say it's 229th, involved in various countries, but they're in business. And if they are opening here, business is important for all of us. And if they're going to exploit what we have here, as long as we position ourselves better, argue better, negotiate better, we need to do some business. And at the end of the day, people get employed. Even in those hotels, when people sit and eat, they eat Kenyan food. They eat in hotels. Right, they pay up Kenyans and so on. So yeah, something needs to happen in the economy.
Fantastic. Always a treat, guys. I really appreciate your input this morning. We need to wind up here. Thank you so much. I think you'd given a closing remarks as well. Yeah, you had.
I tried.
You tried. Let's leave it at that because of time. But I want to thank you. Always a treat. I really enjoyed that conversation. And it really matters who also is negotiating for us as well at that particular table, because at the end of the day, we'll come and ask who are negotiating for this contract that were being made as well. Thank you. You've been watching Ungozi Today here on Morning Prime. News Diary is up next.